You're listening to the Tenets on the Kyle Dempster Studios Network. For more information on the show, visit kyledempsterstudios.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tenets. My name is Kyle, and I'm joined here by my co-host, as always, Stark Ground. How are you, Stark?
Pretty good.
Excellent. We are recording this just 2 days from the new announcement, or the upcoming announcement, I should say, of ESO's 2019. I don't know what all they'll announce. The DLC, the
Season
chapter?
of the Dragon, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the entire year, actually. Given they're calling it a season, it's probably going to be all DLC this year. Is going to get, at least part of it's going to get announced.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see if kind of predictions are right. That this is going to be, I mean, again, Season of the Dragon. Is this all going to be tied together for once? Because, I mean,
that would be really cool.
Yeah, we talked about, I think a second or so last week, but like each piece of 2018 was very independent. Murkmire didn't really tie into Dragon Bones per se, so
That's kind of been the pattern. It's kind of been the pattern so far. The DLC dungeons, the dungeon packs anyway, because this isn't true of Imperial City, but the subsequent DLC dungeon packs are sort of standalone. They're their own thing that's sort of out there by themselves. And then what we've had was starting with Morrowind, and actually starting with Hrothgar even, and then jumping ahead to Morrowind and Clockwork City and Somerset were all sort of this single story arc. Hrothgar foreshadows it at the very end. When you complete it, you get a couple of extra scenes that are like, oh yeah, no, this is coming. And then obviously a year later it did come, but that's sort of what's going on there. And there's some foreshadowing also in Dark Brotherhood that you might have seen actually by this point that leads into Morrowind also.
Oh, I did.
So,
Yep.
All of the sort of normal story content has been a little bit hooked together leading up to that. And then Somerset was the conclusion and the climax of that story. And so Murkmire sort of sits there on its own. And I think they're starting that up again. I'm not sure. Like it sounds like this year, the dungeons are going to be built into the story too, which is kind of neat.
I'm so excited, and so are they. I mean, Rich keeps stopping by the stream, and I can just tell his excitement. He's like, I can't even wait a week. That was a week ago now, but like, he's like, I can't wait. I'm like, wait, it's coming. So I think they fly out there tomorrow to get ready for it. We've had some updates on it. So there's going to be a pre-show, which I don't think they've formally announced. The post-show is going to have Ninja 614. And I believe Jibbs is on there from the Lore Seekers podcast. So cool. friend of the show here. So definitely go give those guys a follow. I think so. We don't know the exact format, but it sounds like that's going to be kind of a conversation with them. I assume via video call. I mean, that's fairly last minute to decide about flying people out to California for that. However, I mean, Ninja's now full-time streaming, so it's possible that he very well could. It really depends.
Well, it's possible with this also, like, just on a scheduling front, it's possible that the reveal on the 15th, very likely actually, that it was scheduled 2 or 3 months ago.
That's extremely possible.
So
as well.
Ninja probably, and this isn't at his expense. Like Ninja probably knew that he was going to be asked to come and do this presentation back in October or November.
Yep.
That, it's like, oh, hey, would you be willing to come out and do this? And is only now, like, we're coming to the last minutes, and it's like, okay, now you can publicly say, oh, hey, by the way, I'm doing this. So,
indeed. That is the way of things.
We talked about this actually 2 weeks ago when we were doing the year wrap-up that we hadn't seen any information yet. And I was saying then, it's like, we'll probably see stuff in the first week of January. Well, we're going into the second week of January, and now we've got stuff coming. And it's like, yeah, they managed this we're getting the information on what's coming this year.
I agree. So I'm very excited. We're going to do We're going to do a kind of a live commentary sort of stream. I'm going to have my Twitch open. We'll have like a multi-stream link set up so that people can participate in both streams at once, both my own, where we're kind of commenting on the new news, and also so people can be in the primary chat, because it is important to be on the Bethesda channel, so twitch.tv/Bethesda, because when we hit different concurrent viewer numbers, we're getting things given away. I think it's 50K live viewers is the wallpaper reveal, or like a digital wallpaper given out. 50 or 55K. I'm going from memory here, you guys. 70, I think 70K is the Bantam, no, not Bantam Guar. It's the fiery red pepper guar, or whatever they're calling that.
Jalapeno.
Yeah, basically, right?
I think it actually is chili pepper. I think it's the chili pepper bantam guar. I'm not 100% sure that's the name though. It's something like that.
So he'll be our pet given away at 70,000 live viewers.
Something like that, yeah.
And that's all platforms and consoles. So that's PS4, Xbox, and PC. And then at 90,000, Rich is going to get a tattoo. So
someplace safe for work.
His butt.
That was specified. It has to be someplace safe for work.
His butt. We're all pushing for the butt tattoo. So look out for that. Come by the stream. We're going to start probably early. I wish I had an exact time. Probably like 4 p.m. Eastern. No, what time's their stream? Yeah, their stream's 5 p.m. Eastern. So I think I might start mine at like 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Pacific. That way we're in there early and like can get set up and stuff like that and just keep the hype high. So stop by our stream. We'll have a multi-stream link for you. I can even probably put it in the description, the show notes for this, so you guys have it. Let's see. Let's figure out where we're going now. So we got Addons last week. Addons Part 1. And in that, we talked about a lot of useful things when you're first starting out with add-ons for ESO. So we talked about installing add-ons using Minion Add-on Manager. We covered map add-ons and crafting add-ons, as well as got us started by wrapping up the episode on inventory insight. So this week, we're going to continue with that trend. We're going to do part 2 of the add-on series, and we're going to talk about UI add-ons, because there's a lot of them. Now, some of these ones, Stark, correct me if I'm wrong, some you use, some I use, and then some you're going to throw in here are what general, like recommended ones that neither of us personally use. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a few here that like I don't use them. I've tried them. You've tried them. It didn't really work for either of us, but they do provide a lot of useful functionality for people. There's also a few in here that I've used in the past and moved on from, but might still be the right fit for somebody else.
I think that's a great point. Let's dive straight into this. So I guess I'll pass it right back to you, because you're going to talk to us about AUI, which I can't use.
Yeah, I don't use it anymore either. I forget exactly what my issue was. Basically, this is one of a whole category of add-ons that will completely rework the basic game user interface on the heads-up display to provide more useful information. And they all come with their own little quirks that get added in under the hood that will give you additional things to tweak. One of the things I loved with AUI is that it has an active hotbar for all of your quick slot items. So you can just directly keybind each of your quick slot item points and just be able to switch to them on a key press. And then you still have to activate them by pressing Q or whatever you bound that to, but you can switch it directly just from a key press instead of bringing up the radial menu in combat, it's amazing. It's really great. There is an add-on that lets you do this on its own as a standalone that doesn't do it nearly as well as AUI does. Unfortunately, and this is the problem both of us had that I remember, AUI comes with a few frame rate issues if your system isn't absolutely top of the line. And for both of us, that's a serious problem, given what we're running. And it's a shame, because it's a really, really nice add-on overall. Another thing it does is it'll change your unit frames. Like that's your health bar and the enemy's health bar, your resource bars. It gives you a lot of options to customize that around to different things and change the way they look. And this isn't a huge issue on its own, because it's like, okay, well, this is a cosmetic change. But when you combine this together, you can add additional text to them, provides more user information. And this is pretty common with this kind of overhaul UI. Finally, it's also got scrolling combat text. This is something that actually exists in the base UI of the game, sort of. Like you can have the numbers pop up over their heads. But this gives you an option for it to sort of float around the edge of your vision. That was originally from another one of these called FTC. That's kind of a basic version of this entire class of mods. And as far as I know, that's still supported. So if you just want like the basic version of this without any of the neat little attachments that some of the others have, that might be a place to start. I'm sorry, you were trying to say something?
No. I mean, you need to finish out what you're doing. I was going to say, like, you're looking at some of these, like the buff tracking, like you think you could kill off in like other add-ons that you might be using. But I wish I could use this pack. You're saying like the top end system portion. And yeah, you guys want to be careful about what add-ons you install. And just a quick reminder to not install our entire list of recommendations all in one fell swoop. I think we said that at the end of last week's episode. But when you do that, you run the risk if you install, like, let's say 5+ at one time, you might not know which add-on is the culprit for certain things. So, like, for myself, I think I noticed AUI's frame rate issue because it was the only one I'd put in, and toggling it on and off, I could see, wow, there go 10 frames just when AUI's up on the screen. But looking at this list that you just mentioned, built-in minimap, buff tracking, I'm like, crap, I use 3 or 4 different add-ons to do what this one does. Unfortunately, it's just got a large resource requirement.
Yeah. And it's possibly worth pointing out, neither of us have touched it in about 3-4 months. It is possible this stuff's been fixed. It's possible if you're listening to this in the future, this stuff's been fixed. And it's also possible that whatever's causing a frame rate issue for us isn't going to affect you.
Great.
So it's worth saying, okay, well, I'm going to try this anyway and see if it bothers me, see if it works for me. This is something we also talked about last week when we were talking about Harvest Map, I think, where that one, like, I have a serious frame rate problem with Harvest Map if I load up pre-baked maps of everything, because it's adding a lot of data points to the map system there.
Yeah.
And that kills my system. The other reason you don't want to launch everything we're listing at once and just stick it all in is because I'm about to list another add-on that's almost the same thing. LUI is another one of these massive overhaul add-ons that completely changes the fundamental UI on the HUD. And it does some of the same things AUI does. Like, it's got the floating text. It's got the custom frames. The frames are different, and they're slightly more customizable on where you place them in the case of LUI. So that's a difference between the two. It will dump a lot of stuff into your chat box if you want it to. LUI will let you customize stuff. So, like, when quests get updated or when you complete a quest, normally you have text pop up across your screen. LUI will let you take that stuff, and then you can put it in the notifications in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that just sort of flow along and then disappear. It'll let you put it in your chat log if you want. It really gives you a lot of control of where this stuff pops up. So you can control how you're getting notified about stuff. You can control how much that's getting thrown in your face. It will give you... it gives you buff tracking, which is something that's now baked into the base game. That's something AUI also does. And ironically, something I don't use either of these add-ons for, or the base game UI. So we'll come back to that in a while. It has an on-screen inventory tracker. That's really nice because it will let you see at any given moment, just right up there, wherever you want it. It'll say, oh, you have, this amount of inventory space. Like this number of slots used, this number of slots total. It'll let you know if your mount needs to be trained. Like, it'll give you a countdown clock there, like part of the same little UI module you can move around. It's really nice. It's worth looking at and messing around with and seeing if that's just features you want. And you can turn off pretty much anything you don't want. The same thing goes for AUI and a lot of this style of add-on, because there's always these modular pieces that are useful to you, but the rest isn't. But if you're just grabbing 2 of these at once, these will precisely replicate what the others are doing and probably screw with each other in the process.
I'd like to throw a curveball at Stark here for a second and throw out one that you triggered me to add in. I wasn't going to talk about this, but since, this is kind of the time to mention it, is Zirconian's add-on selector. It is an interesting one. I got turned on to it because of Dots Gaming. He showed it off in a video, and I've shown it off in my own series, that it lets you create add-on packs. So it changes the in-game UI, and it lets you bulk load certain add-ons that you want to use. Really good for testing things, I think. I was going to say, it's kind of helped me with my add-on resource load, basically so I can make it so it knows what all add-ons I want on including crafting add-ons. And I can have another one set up that's like without my crafting add-ons. Because if I'm in a trial, I don't need them. Mm-hmm. And in Friday night's trial, I used that. Stark and I were doing a trial, and I was seeing horrific FPS. I flipped off my crafting add-ons, and one of the 5 that I used was taking me down from 70 frames out of combat down to 1, 2 FPS in the heat of the moment. I don't know why. And removing those crafting add-ons bumped me back up to a stable 40 when there were, all these high quality, high res graphics flashing across the screen. So
all the particle effects too.
Exactly. So you can see that those add-ons aren't screwing me up if I'm out there questing, but this is that weird balance that we talk about that you got to find. Being an add-on minimalist has huge advantages, but knowing which ones you can turn on and off also has its own to help mitigate some of that. Sorry, were you about to say something to there, Stark?
No. Well, the point there is that a couple of common troublemakers when it comes to performance, and we're going to get to these in a little bit, are some of the trade ones because they manage a lot of data.
Oh, yeah.
And by necessity, they have to. They're tracking a bunch of items in the game database, and telling you what they're selling for that you can see, or what they're being listed for, which is pulled from an external database source. So in both of those cases, they're moving a lot of data, and that can just murder your PC in combat.
That's so true. We'll definitely talk about the one that I almost lost my mind over the other day. I was thinking we could drop down 3 add-ons here on the list and pop to Dark UI first, since I feel like this fits into the AUI and LUI one a little bit better. But Dark UI is a great, very, very simple overhaul to the user interface. It does not include all of the, extra effects that we mentioned in AUI and LUI, so it's not adding buff tracking or other things like that. But instead what it does is it strips the UI down a little bit and makes it more minimalist. So it fits this very modern feel. And at first I wasn't a fan. I think I just put it on in December, so I did 6 months of the game without it. But I put it on because I was getting, I think last week we mentioned Votan's minimap. It flows very nicely with Votan's. They just look really good together on the screen. And so what it does, again, stripping the UI elements, it actually saves you a little bit of performance, because at times it's kind of reducing, particles the wrong word, but it reduces a little bit of the density of the UI as it's commonly projected. I've not seen a large increase of FPS from it, just as an anecdote, but other people have said that they have. So again, depending on your computer setup, it may or may not yield benefits. At its most basic, I don't think it drags your system at all. It's not an add-on that's pulling your rig down any further and consuming more resources. It's actually probably freeing some up.
Yeah. What it's doing specifically, this is...
Tell me.
The ones we're talking about that are UI overhauls are actually changing the UI. Mm-hmm. What Dark UI does is actually strip stuff out. It's just changing the skin, basically. And the functionality here is it takes a bunch of textures that the game puts on your UI at all times that are designed to give it a certain flavor, mm-hmm. and removes them. It disables them. There's actually a few of these sort of add-on, or sort of these UI skins, and Dark UI is the only one I'd actually recommend. There is a Morrowind one, there is an Oblivion one that are designed to replicate the UIs from those games to the best you can with the way ESO's UI is set up. But really, Dark UI is the one where it's okay, well, this is a significant improvement, because if you're running up against frame rate issues associated with the textures being used in your UI, in the base UI, mm-hmm. this will help deal with that. And this is another one times when it's the variations and computer configurations of your computer will affect your frame rate directly. And for some people, you'll look at this and you'll be like, okay, this is a frame rate improvement. For some people, it's not going to matter at all. You're not going to see a performance change at all. It is slicker, it is cleaner, because instead of having the sort of beveled glass overlay across your health bar, it's just a flat gradient. And it's entirely personal preference which you prefer, whether you actually want it to have this sort of glass look, or whether you want it to just be okay, well, here's the data right here that I can look at. I've used it. I actually do like it quite a bit, but I don't use it currently. And same thing, I don't actually see a performance increase, but that is something that some people benefit from.
Yeah. Is that all we have for UIs in here? I'm just double checking for like more UI skins. I think so.
No, I think that's the only UI skin that actually made it into the list.
So let's feel free to move on to combat metrics. This is one that I really am eager to learn more about myself. Just as I get more, into harder content and want to be competitive with other people in terms of not dragging the party down, let's say. Combat metrics, and you'll be able to speak way more to this than me, but in its most general sense, you'll notice it floating. I think it starts in the top left-hand corner of your screen, and it is basically tallying the damage your character is doing to either target dummies or things out in the world. Very useful in tracking buffs or your uptime on buffs and things like that as well. Now, it's not very obvious how you get to the next screen. It's one of my biggest complaints about the add-on is I think you can hotkey it, but...
You can.
Okay. So hotkey.
You can also hotkey it so that it'll automatically dump to text. Like your group DPS or your single target DPS can be dumped directly to your chat.
You know what? I think mine does that automatically. Like if I go up fight up against a target dummy, if I cast a couple spells, it'll say you're...
No, that's the dummy behavior. That's the no, that's actually base game. The dummies will do that.
Really?
The dummies will tell you how much damage your DPS is. Yeah.
I had
because that's the entire purpose of dummies.
I had no idea that was a feature. I feel like a silly person, but I mean,
I've always it's just the combat dummies.
Wow. Okay, I'd always been running combat metrics, so I never play with a dummy without it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, no. So that's the dummies. What combat metrics does is it will give you that data for anything else. So like you come out of an actual fight, you can actually keybind it, so it will dump your single target or your multi-target DPS into chat if you want. And there's a certain kind of player who does that, and they're like, yeah, that proves I'm a badass. Click. And everybody else is like, okay, so what?
Right. No, that's true. Don't use it to be a douche.
Yeah, that's true. What combat metrics is very useful for is watching what you do after the fact. It's a fairly useful, fairly versatile tool, but it's all about identifying and assessing your own performance as a player. And a lot of that means you have to look at it and figure out, well, this is what my fight looked like statistically. What can I do? What did I do that I can improve? And it doesn't really give you anything beyond that, beyond just the raw data. It will tell you, like you said, it'll tell you the uptimes of the damage you dealt or the buffs you did. It will tell you where the primary sources of your damage came from. Like, you dealt damage to somebody, they've got, 10,000, they've got 10 million health, and it will tell you each of the damage sources that applied to the target and how much of that was split up. So like, what percentage of your damage was done was light attacks? What percentage of your damage done was from one specific ability or this other ability or a debuff you put on the target? Like, this whole list of things. And in looking at that and gradually learning the game and getting better as a player, you'll start to understand things you can do to improve it. One of the big ones is trying to increase the uptime on your buffs that you can control. So, for example, things like brutality or sorcery that increase your spell or weapon damage by 20%. And if you're trying to keep that up, you're trying to maintain that while you're going through and playing and killing things, then you're going to see, oh, wait, if this is not at 100%, or even if this is not like 80%, then I need to spend a little bit more time keeping track of when that buff is falling off and making sure I'm refreshing it before it's gone.
Mm-hmm. As a healer,
it's deceptively simple from a perspective of, okay, well, here's a bunch of data, but it does take some time and some effort to figure out what you're looking at and what you want.
Agreed.
It gives you information on where you can improve.
And if you're looking to call it up for the first time, /CMX, I think is its call up command. And that's one of my biggest complaints is I wish it was something a little bit more like combat metrics, CBM or something like that would be a little bit more memorable to me. But I struggled for a while. I was like, how do I even bring this up to be more than the little, like, I find unuseful display in the top left-hand corner. But probably that's unuseful to me because I don't know what it means. So again, learn your add-ons, and this is why you don't install 50, because then you don't know, like me, that the dummies in the game will actually report your DPS to you, because you've got add-ons and stuff. So, moving on, let's talk about other things that the game kind of does but doesn't do well enough, and that is P-Chat. P-Chat is a chat add-on that you can put into the game that does different functionality to your chat window. Notably, it adds notifications for whispers. Now, I think I have something that does this. And again, I don't know which one mine is. But it's not P-Chat. I had P-Chat conflict with another add-on, so I don't use it. Copy and paste functionality, I think, is one of the reasons I wanted it to begin with. So you can do that. And it also...
Yeah, it's really useful for pulling links out of chat in-game and using them. So that's... Because as the game exists normally, like if somebody links me a Discord channel in-game, it's like I have to sit here and have to manually key the whole thing in.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I guess I don't do so much copy and pasty through my own chat to need it. But timestamps is another one that's useful. I think I use, and I'm not recommending this to people out there, but I think I use Shishu's guild manager sort of thing. It adds it's a whole suite of add-ons for guild stuff management, and I think they have it baked into theirs. So for a while, I was angry at P-Chat. I thought that P-Chat was doing something I'm trying to turn the setting off, it's not working. Yeah, it was Shishu's doing stuff that it wasn't P-Chat at all. Again.
Well, I've got an issue like that right now, ironically, where I've got two different things that are trying to track active times on abilities, and they both put it over the icon on the base UI, and I'm like, which one is it? I'm trying to turn off one of these because I've got one I prefer. And I was like, no, that's there. Yeah, a warning about installing multiple add-ons at once, and this isn't even I installed them in multiple ones at once. It's I installed an add-on, and then I lost some settings data for a couple of add-ons because I was tinkering with stuff, and now I come back, it's like, okay, which setting do I need to find and turn off? Yeah, no, that's a legitimate thing.
Yeah, it's something we we can just do our best to warn people against. Moving right along, item preview. You want to talk about this one, Stark?
No, that was one you put there.
Oh, I did. Okay.
You got to talk about that one.
My bad. Item preview, I thought that you had been the one that actually recommended it to me. But item preview basically shows you, with varying results, your recipes that you're looking at. So if you're looking at a furnishing recipe, it'll actually display it on the screen. I think it's working now. Around the time of Murkmire's launch, it was pretty glitchy. So if you're going through a guild store, for example, and you're looking at purchasing recipes, and you're like, well, what does a Nord table grand, or I just made that name up, but what does that look like? You can actually left click on it and it will show you an example of it. Very, very useful add-on. I can't remember if it does any other previews. That's, I think, the only one that comes to mind. But very nice, very useful. Sometimes a little bit buggy, especially around patches, but it's arguably necessary for a crafter.
I want to say that's the one that also lets you preview what armor and weapons will look like when you hover over them, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think you're right. I think if you click on a weapon at the crafting station, I think it'll put it on your character. Maybe also in just your standard inventory screen too. Again, one of those ones it's been in my thing so long, it's kind of, all of its quirks have fallen into the background of my mind. Okay, sorry, this is the one you had in here. Inventory grid view. I've never used it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. So what it does is it adds it gives you the ability to bind a toggle, and it will switch it between the standard sort of vertical text-based inventory system you're familiar with and a grid. You can swap it over, so it's just the icons rolling left to right across. And it'll store, I think, by default, about 8 per line. You can adjust the size. You can adjust the background icons. You can tweak it so that it'll look the way you want it to. It's really nice if you look at the UI and you're like, yeah, but I want to see all of my stuff. Mm-hmm. There's actually not much more beyond that. It's just a very simple, oh, hey, look, here's a bunch of stuff, and I want it in a more digestible format for myself.
One thing that's always kept me away from inventory grid view is that you do lose the name for the items, and as a new player, I found that to be something I didn't want. I have no doubt that if you're someone that really learns what the icons mean quickly, and that's something you just know, or you've been playing for a long time, great add-on. For someone like me that's always looking through my inventory for something, not my favorite. So that's kept me away. I want to try it one of these days, though. Like you said, relatively.
And of course, the perk with this one is once you are at a state where you're dealing with a lot of inventory content, it does make life easier because it's going to put stuff Like, it will still sort stuff the way you have it set up, and it will make it much easier to realize, okay, this is how much of my inventory is being chewed up by surveys or being chewed up by master writs or something.
I'm installing it right now, actually. I feel like I should give it a whirl and see how I like it.
Yeah. One thing that's fun with that, it's a little bit weird, it has separate skin options that you can stick in the background behind the objects so you can sort and see what they look like. Some of those are actually really cool looking. I'm not sure if they were developed by separate people who were just coming along and going, okay, I want icons that look like this, but there are actually more options than what you see in the add-on itself.
Huh. Interesting. Well, I'll give it a whirl and I can report back on my findings. I'll see if I am finally at the stage where I find it beneficial. Up next, you have a quest tracker in here. I've never used any quest trackers. Want to tell me why I should start using one?
Because you have more than one active quest.
Ah, that sounds like a great use.
Yeah. So there's the thing about ESO, and I do like it about the game, which is you don't actually just go out and collect a ton of quests at any given moment.
Agreed.
You pick up one or two, and you'll go and you'll do them, and you'll turn them in, or you'll finish them, however they're designed to end.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's kind of in the structure of, okay, I've got this little piece of a story, and I'm going to play through the story, and then it self-concludes. But you are going to end up in situations where it's like, oh, I've got this quest that's going on over here, and then I've got another quest that's here, like in the same, sometimes even the same delve or in the same dungeon or whatever. And what Ravlock's Quest Tracker does, and there's a few other examples of this, so this is not the only one that does this, it will give you multiple quest entries on your UI. It changes the quest tracking to look more like what you can expect from a conventional MMO, which will mean it will be a more cluttered UI if you're using this.
Oh.
But it will also let you know, oh, hey, by the way, while you're in here, grab that sack over there because that's actually a quest you need.
Oh.
It will remind you that you've got these other quests that are running at the same time. So sometimes it'll save you from repeat trips. Sometimes you'll forget to look at it and won't realize something's going on, but it can help.
Ooh, yeah, I see what you mean about the UI being a little bit more cluttered. I'm looking at their pictures for it.
Well, I think you've seen my UI, haven't you, at some point?
I'm certain in like a picture, but I probably not paid attention to it, that portion of it. Interesting. I don't know if I'm going to try that one just yet. I may someday, though. I'm not big on questing, so, but I mean, even for, the small amount that I do, I think that could be.
Well, one thing that I run across all the time is doing writs, because then I've got all 7 writs on the screen at once. So I know immediately which ones are complete and which ones aren't.
That's a fair point. That's a good one. That'd be useful. The achievement tracker next kind of ties into this idea. This was you added, right?
Yeah. It's basically the same situation too. It lets you pin your achievements to the UI while you're working on them. Oh. So they'll show up almost like a quest tracker. It's like, oh, hey, I need to, find these locations to get this exploration achievement. Or I need to block this amount of damage to get the dungeon blocker achievement. Oh, wow. In some cases, it's just, okay, well, that's neat to have, and it gives me a little bit of sense of progression when you're out doing stuff.
Yeah.
In other cases, it's like, oh, yeah, I want to actually get this done because there's a die associated with it or something like that. And as a result, it's easy to just lock it on my screen and know, okay, this is what I have left to do. For example, last night, I was running around in the Imperial City trying to get the Wandering Horrors achievement. And at that point, you have to hunt down 12 specific bosses and kill them. And they're not pushovers, but having the list up helps a lot in being able to figure out where I need to go to find the others.
And looking at this one, it looks like there's a Somerset plugin or a Somerset version that you should get instead of the older one.
Yeah, I think the current version is actually the Somerset one. This is a very old add-on. It's been getting updates, but...
Yeah, this was June of 18. It got updated. What about the other one? Yeah, February of 2017. So that's another thing when you're looking at some of these add-ons. If you see multiple versions of them, I know it's a hassle and we don't like to read things these days, but do click through if you see that there's multiple versions of the add-on especially if it's by the same person or it has almost the exact same name, because some of them do require a newer API plugin sort of thing. So make sure to try that out. So for example, I just installed that one as well. I'm going to turn these on one at a time to fit our own advice, but that's a interesting one. Just keep that in mind to get the Somerset version. Harvin's improved skill window. Ooh, you recommended this one to me, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So I don't remember all the specifics of this one, but I know it's very useful. Is this the one that shows you the different morphs that you get?
Yep.
Okay, so this is extremely useful, making sure I know my crap here before I say it. But this one, when you're looking at your skill interface, gets a massive UI improvement thanks to Harvin's. If you are purchasing the base level of a skill, so you just purchase the very first skill, it will immediately show you in-game what your 2 morph options are before you even get to the morphing stage. That's really handy to have that information in-game. That means you can kind of decide if you're actually going to work on that skill or not. It's kind of odd the game doesn't have it baked in. Like, it's so functional, you would feel like the base UI would have that. Other things it gives you, in addition to just showing you the morphs before you're ready to morph, it lets you see, you could toggle just different little UI elements on, like, how many skill, what's it show? Like, the maximum amount of skills in a skill tree or something like that? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
No.
Doesn't this one give you the option to show, like, 10 out of 50 or something like that for some of them? Pretty sure that's Harvin's.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. That was a little strange way to phrase it.
Yeah, I don't know what the term
It'll show you what
is.
So for each of the skill lines, we talked about this months ago when we were discussing the individual skill lines in the game. Each one has a different top level, right? Like a different limit. And those vary. Now, there's a consistent pattern to it all. So, for example, your class skill lines always go to 50. Your racial goes to 50. Your vampire werewolf go to 10. So you can already see where it's starting to get weird. Most of your guild lines go to 10, but then Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild go to 12, and I want to say your Soul Magic one only goes to 6. Like, there's a lot of inconsistency here in how far one of these will go and how close you are to finishing out a skill line.
Yeah.
And one of the things this add-on does is it will go, okay, well, instead of just displaying your current level, which is what the base UI does, it will then also put a slash in and then show the total value. So it'll be like, with Soul Assault, it'll be like 2 out of 6 or 3 out of 6, instead of just being like level 3. How far does this go? Who knows?
Yeah, that's a much better explanation, because I couldn't think of, like, I don't use that very often, because that's one that to me kind of clutters the UI a little bit. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but it is extra content being thrown at you. Does this also have an ability to kind of toggle on, I think, extra, I don't know, the percentage or the actual, I think it shows the individual numbers in
it shows you it shows the actual numbers for progression on those. So this is something, the game keeps this opaque, and like you said, it keeps for a cleaner UI overall. When you're leveling skills, the skill has to earn a certain amount of XP from any XP source you earn while it's slotted, but it has to earn that in order to rank up, and then once it's been ranked up 5 times, because you rank to rank 4, and then you rank up again, and then you can morph it, and then it'll keep track to rank the rest of the way up. The game hides this from you and doesn't really bother explaining it, because if you're using the skill, it's going to happen eventually anyway. So there's not a lot of need to know exactly how close you are. One of the things Harvin's does is it actually exposes those numbers. It puts them in the bar right there and says, okay, this is how much XP you need to get this to move up. Same thing with the skill lines themselves. You can hover over it to get the exact skill line, the exact XP progression for your current level in a skill. But Harvin's will paste that up there on top, and also on a checkbox that's baked into the baked into the UI. Once you install it, you can switch it over to your total progression.
Okay.
So something I've said before, and I think I got the numbers slightly wrong, but it's like when you're looking at a skill line like a weapon, a bow, or the dual wield, something like that. And I was saying that your last 2 levels or your last 5 levels are half your total progression in that skill line. This is what I'm talking about, like the XP growth. And that's not completely accurate, because I think the last 2 are actually 10 or 20% of the total XP you'll have to earn for that skill line ever. But the same idea. There's a curve to this. As you start out, you'll get levels very quickly, and then as you get to higher levels, it'll take more XP to level it up to the next tiers, the final tiers. And Harvin's will actually show you that. It'll show you how close you are to finishing this skill line as a whole. And that can be really useful to you. If this is information that can help you make decisions about what you're going to be doing, it's great. If it doesn't help you, you can turn it off. Like you can turn off those pieces of it and keep others active. So it's really nice. Harvin's stuff, we're going to come back to him on 2 more in a row, but all of his stuff focuses on, it clutters the UI, but it gives you direct access to information the game doesn't bother to provide you, mostly because it doesn't think you need it. And it's mostly correct, but if you find you want this stuff, it's there.
Well, just as a warning, we got a lot more add-ons to list off. We're at probably about the 40-minute mark for this one. So I'm thinking, Stark, that we'll see how we go here through the next couple, but we might want to isolate trade and maybe some of the miscellaneous UI out in the future. We have some other things that are really good, that are really niche or situationally oriented for you guys. Most of the ones we've listed today, you can use in any full-time situation. You can just be running them all the time. But we might isolate those ones out if we can, because some of these ones upcoming are really useful. Do you want to talk about these next 2 Harvins? Because I've not used either of these.
Okay, so extended stats just adds more statistical data to your character screen. This is things like your specific resistances, so fire resist, ice resist, lightning resist. That'll just show up there instead of having you go hunting around and going, well, I've got this ring and I got this enchantment and then I got this set bonus, but what does this do? And then I've got this racial bonus because my character's a Nord. So this will actually display that on the character sheet. Another one that's really nice is it'll give you your crit resist, which is important for PvP. And if you're getting that from a mix of your champion points and your skill, your equipment, it's like, okay, well, how much crit? Yeah, it's great because it gives you that information right up front. It gives you penetration for your weapons and your spells. I love this. Again, clutters it up. There's a lot more stuff. There's about 8 more lines on the UI. And sometimes when I just need to go into my character screen and see what my current weapon damage is or my current spell damage is, it actually gets in the way. Because if you need to see it right now, then I've still got to filter through these additional lines of stuff. But when you're planning your character, when you're putting stuff together, it can help. So that's the trade-off. Yeah, the other one, and this is another one I know you haven't touched, it's very situationally useful if you want to learn more about how the game's screwing with XP, like providing you with it and what it does. And that's all experience bars. This is... last time I used it, and this was a few years ago, it was a little bit cumbersome, and I hope it's been improved since then, but it might not have been. What it does is it lets you add additional XP progression bars to the main UI. And these can behave exactly like the normal XP progression, where it's like it'll pop up when they earn something, and then it'll fade away. And it can even add a specific XP value to it, so it's like you can see, just like with the skills window, it will show you, okay, well, here is what all of these skills will require to level up. It can also tell you exactly how much you gain. Like you'll get +5, you get +15. Like, what did this come from? So when we were talking about skills, and I was saying, how much does having a skill slotted award to that skill line? A lot of this comes from having used this add-on in the past and keeping track of that information. So it's very useful for getting under the hood info, but it's very cluttered.
Wow. Yeah, I can see... I definitely see the advantage of it, especially as you get used to the current UI and, when I want to expand that information, some of it. So for probably some of the newer players that are working to understand the base game UI, might want to hold off on some of these, but then again, what do you think, Stark? For someone that's just getting in and learning, I think the skill window, Harvin's skill window, really
skill window is absolutely vital. That thing is wonderful. Extended stats is useful if you're trying to tweak your build, trying to clean stuff up, trying to figure out what's working, what's not in your build.
Moderate advanced level.
All experience bar is if you want to get your hands, it's not really useful for an advanced user who already has the information. But if you're at this intermediate stage and you want to actually get your fingers in it and figure out what it's doing, moment to moment, the way experience works in this game, then it's really useful for that. It's a very specific tool.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Veering away from skills here, the next one's a personal favorite. This is
a nice one. Port
to a Friend's House. I think I don't want to take too much credit, but I feel like I introduced a lot of people to this that are really using it actively. Like Coco Michelle, I think, uses it a lot now, and she's fairly anti-add-on because she's playing on a rig that cannot handle so much of it.
But I think I introduced you to this originally.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think I fought with you to get try this. Seriously, it's really cool.
I thought I found this one on a website. I don't know. because I remember I was looking at, people were saying you couldn't port. Like, people thought this wasn't a feature in the game. You can't go to someone's house unless it's their primary. And I just remember digging around on the internet and finding port to a friend's house, where basically you type in /PTF in the chat window. It opens up a very simple UI box where you will type in the name of a player, and then from a drop-down list, select their house that you want to travel to. So they have to have permission set so that you can visit it. You know, if they're barring you from visiting, you can't go there. But basically, you can visit anyone's house that's open to you, even if it's not set as their primary residence. It's a great one, especially for someone that has macro keys available. You can very easily keybind your own houses, many of your houses, to keys. I think you have a limit of 10 that can be keybound. But super handy. I have an Elgato Stream Deck, so that gives me these little UI or like LED or LCD, whatever buttons that I can actually change the pictures for. So I can set my houses with an actual image on this like little piece of hardware on my desk, and I can just port to it with a button press. It's super duper handy. I really recommend it. It doesn't get much more complicated than that. The last thing I guess I should say is you can save favorites. So if you're used to traveling to someone like a guild, this is I guess a good example. If you're used to traveling to like someone's guild hall that has a bunch of crafting tables and things like that set up, super handy. You can easily just press a button and go right to that guild hall without needing to find their name and then right click and then port to friend. Like, you know, it saves a lot of time. Ooh, this one's Stark.
I love this.
Necessary.
Somebody turned me on to this, yeah.
Do you want to talk about it or do you want me to?
It's pretty simple.
Go for it. Oh, okay. Action duration reminder. We're trying to trade back and forth. Action duration reminder is probably one of the most necessary. Like, if you're going to walk away with no add-ons, this is probably the one to get. This adds a simple duration on your skill bar for how much time something's running. So very necessary for healers. I think it's necessary for everybody, but like combat prayer, you're shooting that out on the group to buff people, it's going to tell you, you know, it's going to actively count down and show when it expires. Really, it's useful to every single class at fulfilling every single role. It's going to track them for you. It's one of those ones that's so necessary. I'm surprised the base game doesn't have it, because tracking your buffs and your skill uses is so key to playing the game in any sort of meaningful way. Let's see. Next, advanced filters. This is one I didn't have for a while, but now can't live without.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Advanced filters.
I'm living without it, ironically, and it's weird.
What? Why'd you take it off? Any reason?
Because I'm using auto category, which I think we talked about briefly, but that one is really finicky and twitchy, and I love it, but I can't recommend it to people just sort of as a blind pickup. It's like, look at it and say, oh, I want this, then great. But I'm using that. Advanced filters is in general so much better.
It's amazing.
It's a great thing.
In a nutshell, gives you different filter options. You click on the weapons tab in your inventory as it is currently, and then it adds an extra row of options to choose from. So it's going to show you all the items, or if you're talking weapons, you can isolate it to sword, shield, staves, things like that. If you're in consumables, which is probably the category I use this the most in, you can sort your consumable area. You can just isolate it to just show containers that need to be open. Just potions, just foods, things like that. It is amazing. Highly recommend it. Anything else? I mean, that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, it simply adds an additional level of filtering to the entire UI, the entire inventory UI, and it is absolutely amazing in that respect.
Does one of these add-ons add the search option to the bank start?
Yeah.
Is that
advanced,
one?
I think Advanced Filters does, yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of ways you can get a search feature in the bank. I think this is one of them.
I really like that. I mean, okay, if you're walking away with two, probably Action Duration and Advanced Filters. They're both extremely light. You want to tackle this one next, because this was a godsend when you told me about it.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Your skill point finder is very simply, it's a spreadsheet you can slap on your screen that will track all the possible skill points in the game. That's currently 416. And which ones your current character has earned. It also now has a drop-down list, so you can switch between characters and see what other characters need. it's really nice just to be able to go, okay, this character has done these things, but not these things. And when you get to a point in the game where you're like, okay, I want to have enough skill points on this character to do what I want, and I want to get them efficiently and quickly, your skill point finder is just absolutely amazing for that.
Yeah, and it's just /USPF in your chat window to pull it up. I mean, it is a lifesaver. So it shows you what skill points you have and do not have from public dungeons, standard dungeons, quest lines, what sky shards, tells you like the amount of skill points you're missing from sky shards in a zone. Can't live without it. Can't recommend it enough. It's great.
Yeah, it's really nice. You can also directly keybind it. Like I actually have it keybound to num2, so it's just reach out, hit the numpad, hit 2, it comes right up. So you don't even have to do you can actually keybind that. And that's true for some of these where it's like, oh, there's a chat command. It's like, a lot of these can be directly keybound.
That's a good point. And, I think this, we have just a second here to say this, but it's one of my bummers that I wish we had key combination abilities, because that's something we lack in ESO, is the ability to say, like, it got crazy, but in WoW you could do things like Control-Alt-1 would be its own keybind. In ESO, I think we're limited to just one key press per keybind. I
think so.
Bit of a bummer.
I think there is an add-on that lets you do that, and I can't remember what it is.
I'm a guy sitting here with one of those Logitech keyboards that has 18 G keys on it, or macro keys, and I have to find real things for them. I have to, a G key has to correspond to like insert or something like that. So, where are we on the list? I lost my place. Shrendar.
Yeah, Shrendar.
You want to talk about this? Because I'm mixed love with it.
Yeah, this is one that, because it's something we basically, straight up, you don't need this add-on, right? The buff tracking, when this was originally added, was something that the base game did not include. That's since been added to ESO. So it's like, if you just want to track your own buffs and your enemy's debuffs, you can do that now without having to install anything. It's just in your settings. However, Shrendar, I really like the UI for it, because when you configure it, you have the option to have a full bar next to the buff that depletes as it comes closer to shutting down. You can also have it set up so that it will have a circular loop around the outside that similarly counts down sort of clockwise until it expires. Those two things make it a lot easier for me personally to keep track of whether or not a buff's about to expire. But this is one of these things where it's like, this is giving you a lot of options for how you look at this. And this is something we talked about way back when we were talking about LUI and AUI. They both have buff tracking features also. And I'm actually ignoring those features in both of those in favor of a different add-on to handle it, because I prefer the way it presents this. So this gets into this very textual level of, there is an add-on that does this. It does it very, very well. It doesn't do anything else. But for buff tracking, like, I find this really useful because it can actually clean it up a lot by giving you more stuff that's easier to track at a glance.
Interesting. Yeah, it has one of the most nightmarish add-on settings menus, and that's where Shrendar and I don't have the effort, patience, and care to set it up like I should, to take advantage of some of the things you mentioned there.
Yeah. Well, we have the real horror story of an add-ons configuration menu coming up.
Oh, God, I'm not sure which one that is. I'm nervous. Maybe I do. Oh, next on the list.
Yep.
All yours. It's your friend.
Okay.
You just touch it.
I said I wouldn't recommend it, and I kind of won't, but I do love auto category for what it does. It's another one like advanced filters that will give you more tools to sort through what you've got in your inventory. And this is one where it's actually got some lag to it. Like, it adds a little bit of lag to interacting with your inventory because it's crunching a lot of stuff at render. But I'm willing to put up with it because it does let me control how items are sorted in a way that I can't do otherwise, which is I can sort it by the set. So you remember back in Oblivion how you had different categories for items and they were actually separated out. There's a little divider between them, right?
Yes. Vaguely, but yes.
This lets you do that and generate those dividers in real time. And it will sort your set items into their own dividers. So you get to a certain point in the game, and there are a lot of sets that have, let's say, idiosyncratic naming patterns. they'll start with, like, they can start with the set name and then go. So you get like bracer. You start with the item name, you get bracers of sanctuary, or you start with the set name, you get like sanctuary bracers. You're not going to see this on the same set. The sets will usually be consistent with themselves, but they're not going to be consistent across one or another. So what this will do is it'll just so, okay, well, here's all the sanctuary stuff. I'm going to put it over here together. And then it will also go and grab the other sanctuary pieces that are unique and have their own unique names and drop them in with them. Another fun thing it will do is it will go out, it will grab, it can, I shouldn't say will, it can grab your quick slot items and give them their own header under consumables. It can let you grab, like it can let you pull out recipes and motifs that you don't know and split them off into their own header. So there's a lot of stuff here that you can use and tinker with. The problem is it is a very complicated system to sort out, and it's something where you kind of almost want to go into the actual settings INI file and at least manually copy it into another text file, if not changing it like directly there, like in the text file itself, because this one is really hard to configure. And the payoff is there. It's really useful, but this is not an easy, okay, I'm just going to throw this one out here and go, okay, it's simple, I can run this. It takes a significant amount of time and work, and it even has its own wiki associated with it so that you can configure it. But the payoff on what you can do with it is so great. So it's like, it's a complex one where it's like, I love this, but I don't want to inflict this on people, you know?
Yeah, no, and that's the fine balance here. And that's why we go the whole way back to saying, hey, make sure you're choosing something, make sure you're choosing add-ons that pertain to you and you're not killing your own brain in the process. I mean, I just can say that in my experience with World of Warcraft, I'd sometimes gotten so many add-ons in that game that I considered necessary that it would be a stressor to me if anything went wrong with them, and I would actually like want to almost rage quit the add-on game. So really just play with what you need and learn slowly as you go. Things like this could be extremely useful, but I can see it in myself, and I try and take that care to say, very useful, but maybe I can live without it. And that actually kind of segues us into the next one, that this, between advanced filters and this upcoming one, you can kind of have a lighter workaround for maybe not the same exact functionality as auto category, but lighter. So this one I found very, very useful. It is gear sets sort. Very useful to me in the last like month or two where I've started to collect my end game healer sets. So running trials to get things and all that. And now they're all in my inventory and my bank. Not all set pieces share the same title, so you can't always use the search functionality. Let's say, do you know a set that does that off the top of your head, Stark? I can't think of one.
Sanctuary. It's got the necklace of the twin sisters, remember?
Yeah. So there's a good one. So if you type in the search bar Sanctuary, you're not going to pull the full set from your inventory. Like Stark's saying, the necklace isn't going to show up. But set sort, on the other hand, lets you, I think it's in alphabetical order, it will put the sets in there, something like that, but it will group them all together. So it's just a little tabby at the top of your inventory, and instead of sorting alphabetical or by value or something like that, it just lets you sort by set. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very handy, very simple. I don't even know if there's even customizable options, but there probably are. Haven't needed them. Where's that put us? Swaps. Do you use this one at all?
I do not.
I love it, but there are a bajillion other options out there on the market. Swaps competes with things like Alpha Gear 2 and Dressing Room. Basically, it just lets you save configurations of your skill bar. So it lets you, it's an extra little panel next to your skill interface. And there you can set an icon and a name, and it will save your current layout of your bar. So for example, I can have healing PvP bar, and I can give it like a little icon that makes me think of it, and then it'll save whatever's in my bar 1 setup. And then you'll do the same for bar 2, and then however many different sets. It's very handy. I find it works better than Alpha Gear 2's bar thing. I don't even know if we've talked about Alpha Gear 2, but that's its own beast, and I don't want to go there necessarily. Very lightweight, very simple to learn. So if you're having trouble, you're always swapping in and out spells, this will save you a lot of time and for very little payoff, like very little input of effort.
So I'm looking at what's left, and a lot of these are actually really fast.
Well, we're at the hour mark, so I'm not sure. We've got trade that we want to do. Do we want to break it?
No, because these next 7 for the UI are going to go really fast.
Okay, then how about you take these and we'll just kind of almost give them a very brief little rundown.
Okay, this is going to be a little bit like a list because it's like each one of these does something very simple and it's really slick, and then you're done. No accidental stealing will prevent you from taking items in the world that are owned, so flagged in red, unless you are actually in stealth and hidden, or you press an override key that you pre-bound, or you mash the take key. Because if you mash E, and like E is the default, if you mash that, you can actually override it by default settings. You can tweak the settings. You can assign a keybind that will let you just bypass it entirely, or you can go into stealth. It prevents you from getting arrested for trying to turn in your writs. Let me put it that way.
It's a great one. I love it. Don't run it without.
Vampire's Woe lets you lie. There's 2 synergies in the game that you can move in stealth and come up behind somebody and then press X to interact. One of them will feed on them if you're a vampire. One of them will kill them with the Blade of Woe if you're a member of the Dark Brotherhood. If you are both, get ready to flip a coin. You'll know which one you have, and this isn't something where the game is not playable, but it does become a little bit finicky. What Vampire's Woe lets you do is it lets you keybind a toggle to disable feeding or the Blade of Woe. Either one. Or both, actually, if you want them both turned off. So, again, very simple and a very slick way that it's like you won't accidentally feed on somebody, lose your stage 4, lose your ability to move at full speed and sprint, and not kill the guy who is now angry with you and giving you a bounty.
Very helpful.
Yeah, really nice. Grim Focus Counter is the first one I think we've listed. It's class specific. If you're running a Nightblade and you're at endgame, you're going to be running an ability called Grim Focus or Grim Resolve, or what's the other morph? I don't even remember. The basic function of this is you make 5 light attacks or 5 points worth of heavy attacks, so it's 2.5, to a target, any target, and it will activate an effect where you fire a spectral bow at them for massive damage. It's a major part of how the Nightblade works as a class. This puts a counter right around your reticle to keep track of where you are with it. Now, Action Duration Reminder also keeps track of this and will also let you know how many, but it's down on the skill itself. It's not in front of you. So Grim Focus Counter is really nice if you're playing Nightblade because it's right there. We've got Personal Assistant. So if you've got the Banker, the Merchant, or the Fence, which we recommend you not use, do not use Bahari, the Smuggler. She's going to take you for a ride. But if you've got any of those 3, this will let you just directly keybind them. So just a single key press and it'll summon Tithys, or it'll summon Nuzuma.
Love it.
Or it might accidentally summon Pahari. Like each of the you can keybind each of them, so it's separate. But it's just, you don't have to worry about slotting them in your quick slots. You don't have to worry about messing around with them at all. It's just push a button and there they are.
So good. I use this all the time thanks to you.
Raid Notifier is a little more complex. Probably should give it more time at some point. But the basic thing is it will give you UI notifications in trial content. So if you're running endgame content, that will help you identify and recognize mechanics that are in effect that you need to respond to. Again, very customizable. There's a lot of stuff buried under the hood with this one, and it's very specific to the content. So there's stuff for Mauve Locage, there's stuff for Cloud Rest, there's stuff for Hall of Fabrication, and that doesn't overlap. But it's very useful if you're running this endgame content to be able to say, okay, well, this is what this is called, and this is what it's going to do. It won't tell you what it's going to do. You're going to have to learn that on your own, but you'll see the name again in the future when you're running it later. So very useful. Thief's Tools is just a little icon, a little heads-up display element for your UI that will let you see how many stolen items are in your inventory, how much they're worth, how many stolen items are in your inventory that you're planning on laundering instead of selling, and also when the reset timer is. It also has notification for if you have Prevent Attacking Innocents turned on, and if you have Auto Loot for stolen items enabled. So when you open a container, you immediately hoover stuff out. and it will let you keybind toggling prevent attacking innocents and prevent or auto looting stolen items. So you can turn those off and on as you want. Again, on a direct key press. Very simple, very nice. I think I can thank Inklings for pointing this one out. Really cool. And this last one is yours.
Last one is Can I Horn? And it is basically an aggressive war horn tracker. So very handy. I know we talked about other ones that will track buffs, but this one's great because it makes it very simple for you to see. It's simply just text on your screen. You can decide how big you want it to be and where you want to position it, and it will... And I think it says the words Warhorn active, and when there's no Warhorn active and you're ready to blow it, I believe it's in green, and then when a Warhorn is active, it's in red, and then the text changes to yellow in very much like a stoplight fashion when it is almost time to blow the Warhorn. So instead of having to isolate this one buff, for example, Shrendar is giving me a bajillion buffs that are active, and sometimes it's hard to pick Warhorn out of there, especially when people are dying and you're trying to save them. This makes it very clear and obvious, like time to Warhorn, boom, done. So very, very minimal, like anything. Little impact on your running and little impact on your screen.
I think we've got time to actually run through this. We'll go over a little bit, but I think it's probably worth it just to bundle this in.
We're definitely over. Let's save this one for next week because we're over an hour mark at this point. So cool. Just to keep it nice and simple for people, we'll come back because I think those ones deserve some time.
They do.
So we'll come back to trade in the future. So next week will probably be a split between us talking about both the announcements from Tuesday and some last trade add-ons, because these are really handy for you.
If you're selling or buying stuff.
Yeah. So, reminder, I'm on my stream going to do we'll be doing a kind of our own commentary sort of stream on the Tuesday's announcements. Tuesday's announcements start at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific time. So tune into twitch.tv/Bethesda. Mine will be over there live at twitch.tv/Kyle Dempster Studios. I'll be streaming tomorrow as well, which is Monday. So we'll probably be doing some lead up hype. I know we're going to give away a Torch Bug on Tuesday. So come by the stream for that if you want a chance of Torch Bug pet. In the meantime, feel free to follow Stark and I on Twitter. I'm at Kyle Dempster STU on Twitter. And you're at...
Michael J. Schwartz.
And the link to the Discord is down below if you want to join that and ask any questions. I will be recording another add-on spotlight video today where I'm going to talk about actually some of these UI add-ons in particular. I think I'm showing off at least 4 of them in this week's video. Last week I actually showed off a couple of our map add-ons, including map pins, Votan's mini-map, stuff like that. So if you want any help with seeing these, go check that out. I also do one on how to install them through Minion, kind of like we covered in Voice last week. So I think that's going to wrap our episode. We'll see you guys back here next Sunday with hopefully a lot of hype. I'm personally hoping for a Necromancer class, but we'll see what we get here.
For what it's worth, you're not alone. There are a lot of people there with you.
What are you hoping to hear as the second thing?
I'm hoping for spellcrafting still.
Okay. That's fair. There's a lot of chatter about that too. I would not.
Is.
You know what I want? And I don't think we're getting it with this one. I want to see more added to the reskinning system with pets. We got the bear. You can morph's the wrong word, but you can reskin the Warden bear. I'd like to see more of that stuff come into the game. It's a lot of cash shop options for them if they want to add that stuff to the Crown Store. Just saying. So everybody, we'll see you next Sunday with hopefully great news. Until then, enjoy your travels across Tamriel and go play with some add-ons. Bye, everyone.
Take care.